There's a company that makes power tools that you cannot buy at Home Depot. You cannot order them on Amazon. You cannot find them at Lowe's or Menards or any of the major tool retailers that stock every other professional brand you have heard of. If you walk into a construction supply house looking for Hilti, you will not find them on the shelf. The only way to buy a Hilti tool is through Hilti. A Hilti salesperson will come to your job site. They will look at what you are building, understand what problems you are trying to solve, and then explain which Hilti products address those problems. They may offer to let you try the tools before committing. They will follow up, they will come back, and then, increasingly, they will suggest that you not buy the tools at all, but lease them under a monthly subscription that covers the equipment, the maintenance, the calibration, the replacement if something breaks, and the upgrade to the next generation when it arrives. This is a company that has found a way to compete in the professional power tool market, not by selling more tools than anyone else, but by making tools in a fundamentally different way, selling them in a fundamentally different way, and financing them in a fundamentally different way from every competitor it faces. Hilti is a $6 billion company headquartered in a country so small that most people cannot find it on a map. It has never been publicly traded. It has never needed to be. And the business model it has built over 8 decades of operation represents one of the most coherent and difficult to replicate competitive strategies in modern manufacturing. To understand how a workshop in the tiny principality of Liechtenstein became one of the most respected names in global construction, you need to start at the beginning, which is 1941, which is a war, and which is, as these stories often are, a beginning that had no particular reason to end where it did. Liechtenstein, 1941, the workshop that started it. Martin Hilti was not building a global company in 1941. He was trying to survive. Liechtenstein, in the early 1940s, was a tiny, landlocked principality of roughly 60,000 people, squeezed between Switzerland and Austria, with no access to the sea, no significant natural resources, and no particular reason to become the headquarters of a global construction technology company. It had managed to remain neutral during the conflicts that had swept repeatedly through Central Europe, and that neutrality, combined with its banking discretion and its location adjacent to the Swiss economic machine, gave it the particular character of a place that exists between larger forces rather than being shaped by them. Martin Hilti opened a small mechanical workshop in Schön, Liechtenstein in 1941 with his brother Eugen. The workshop did contract manufacturing work, the kind of small precision machining that keeps lights on, and employees paid without producing anything that anyone outside the immediate region would care about. The workshop survived the war years. What it became afterward is the consequence of a specific product opportunity that Martin Hilti identified in the post-war reconstruction boom. Europe after the Second World War needed to be rebuilt. The reconstruction of bombed cities, the repair of damaged infrastructure, the expansion of housing stock for displaced populations, and the industrial rebuilding of an economy that had been organized around war production created the largest sustained construction boom in European history. The demand for construction tools, construction materials, and construction labor was enormous. Into this demand, Hilti introduced what would become its first defining product category, the powder-actuated fastening tool. The DX100 and the birth of a category A. A powder-actuated fastening tool uses the explosive energy of a powder charge to drive a fastener, typically a nail or a bolt, directly into concrete or steel with a force that no hand tool or battery-powered drill could replicate. The technology had existed in various forms before Hilti commercialized it, primarily in the context of military and industrial applications. What Hilti did with the DX100, their first commercial powder-actuated tool, was package this technology in a form that professional construction workers could actually use on a job site, with the reliability, the safety features, and the practical ergonomics that a tool used repeatedly throughout a working day requires. The powder-actuated fastener concept was genuinely transformative for construction. Attaching items to concrete or structural steel had previously required drilling holes, inserting anchors, and driving fasteners through a multi-step process that consumed time and labor. A powder-actuated tool could accomplish the same attachment in a single step, in a fraction of the time, with a result that was structurally equivalent or superior. The productivity improvement that this represented on a large job site, a building under construction where thousands of fastenings need to be made, was substantial enough that contractors who adopted the technology gained a competitive advantage over those who did not. Hilti did not simply sell this tool. They built the technical knowledge to go with it, the understanding of which fastener and which tool at what powder load would produce which result in which material. This technical knowledge was something Hilti's salespeople brought to the job site, along with the tools themselves. From the beginning, Hilti's sales model was built around expertise rather than commodity availability. You did not go to a store and pick up a Hilti tool. A Hilti representative came to you and helped you understand what you needed and why. This was not simply a sales technique. It was the beginning of what would become the company's most durable competitive advantage. The TE series and the rotary hammer revolution. The next technology that defined Hilti's professional identity came through a collaboration with engineering partners that produced the TE series of electro-pneumatic rotary hammers. A rotary hammer is a power tool that combines rotation with a hammering action to drill into concrete, masonry, and stone. The combination is more effective than rotation alone because the hammering action breaks up the material ahead of the drill bit, while the rotation clears the debris. This dramatically reduces the time and effort required to drill holes in hard materials compared to conventional rotary drills. The electropneumatic mechanism that Hilti's TE series used was a specific engineering approach that generated the hammering action through a pneumatic piston driven by the tool's motor rather than through direct mechanical impact. The pneumatic mechanism produced a more consistent hammering action with less vibration transmitted to the operator than alternative designs. The result was a class of tool that became the standard against which professional concrete drilling was measured. When construction professionals who worked with concrete regularly thought about drilling, they thought about Hilti. The TE series built brand loyalty among exactly the professionals whose daily work involved the problems that Hilti's tool solved. This professional specificity was not an accident. It was the deliberate consequence of a sales model that kept Hilti's salespeople on job sites, watching professionals work, understanding their problems, and feeding that understanding back to product engineers who used it to develop tools for the next generation. The Hilti salesperson on a construction site in the 1970s was not just a revenue-generating asset. They were a research instrument. The intelligence they gathered about how professionals actually worked, what problems they encountered, and what solutions they were improvising in the absence of better tools was information that shaped Hilti's product development in ways that no market research survey conducted from a distance could replicate. The direct sales model as competitive intelligence. To understand why Hilti's refusal to sell through retail channels is not simply a business model quirk, but a genuine strategic advantage, you need to understand what the retail channel does to the relationship between a tool manufacturer and the professional who uses the tool. When a tool is sold through a retailer, the retailer is the customer. The professional who eventually buys the tool is several steps removed from the manufacturer. The manufacturer knows what the retailer buys. The retailer knows what the consumer buys. The consumer's experience with the tool, their specific use cases, their workarounds for the tool's limitations, their frustrations with features that do not work as expected. This information exists, but it exists far from the engineers who could use it to improve the product. The feedback loop from professional user to product engineer runs through the retailer, through sales data aggregation, through market research processes that are inherently slower, less specific, and less rich in operational detail than direct observation. Hilti's direct sales model short-circuits this intermediary chain. The Hilti sales representative who visits a professional job site regularly knows things about how that professional uses Hilti tools that a manufacturer selling through retail can only guess at. They know which features get used and which do not. They know what the tool is being used for, that it was not specifically designed for. They know what a competitor's product does that the professional wishes the Hilti product did. This intelligence flows back to Hilti's engineering teams, not through formal market research reports, but through the ongoing relationship between salespeople who understand the products technically and engineers who understand the products mechanically. Hilti's sales organization functions as a distributed research network, permanently deployed on job sites around the world, continuously generating intelligence about how professional construction actually works. This is a capability that competitors who sell through retailers cannot easily replicate. They can hire market researchers. They can conduct focus groups. They can analyze sales data. What they cannot easily do is maintain a permanent, technically knowledgeable human presence on the job sites where their products are actually used. The insight that the direct sales model generates is not just operationally valuable, it is structurally irreplaceable. The knowledge that exists in a direct relationship between a technical salesperson and a professional contractor cannot be purchased or approximated by a company that does not have that relationship. Fleet management. The inversion of manufacturing economics. If Hilti's direct sales model is the first pillar of its competitive differentiation, its fleet management program is the second, and arguably the more radical of the two. The standard economics of manufacturing are built around planned obsolescence, or at minimum, around the acceptance that products will wear out and be replaced. This is not necessarily sinister. Products that wear out require new products to be purchased, and new products represent revenue. A manufacturer whose products lasted indefinitely would eventually run out of customers because the existing installed base would never need replacement. This logic pervades the consumer goods industry and most of the professional tool industry. Tools are made to last long enough to establish quality credibility and generate loyalty, but not so long that the replacement cycle slows to the point where revenue growth stalls. Hilti's fleet management model inverts this economics completely, and the inversion is not a minor adjustment. It is a fundamental reorientation of incentives that changes what the company's engineering teams are optimized to produce. Under fleet management, a professional contractor does not buy Hilti tools. They pay a monthly subscription fee that gives them access to a specified set of tools, all maintenance and calibration service, replacement of tools that are lost or stolen, and upgrade rights to the next generation of tools when they are released. For the contractor, this converts a capital expenditure into an operating expense, with a predictable monthly cost, rather than lumpy capital investments in tool purchases. It eliminates the administrative burden of managing tool repair and calibration. It removes the risk of being stuck with tools that have become obsolete. For Hilti, the model creates a recurring revenue stream rather than episodic sales revenue. This is financially attractive in ways that financial markets have valued highly in other contexts. The subscription revenue predictability that software companies have trained investors to recognize as a premium business model characteristic. But the deeper economic implication of fleet management is what it does to Hilti's incentives around tool quality and durability. When Hilti sells tools, a tool that lasts longer than expected reduces replacement sales revenue. The durable tool that never needs to be replaced is, from a revenue perspective, a missed replacement sale. When Hilti leases tools through fleet management, a tool that lasts longer than expected reduces repair costs, reduces replacement costs, and allows Hilti to spread the capital cost of the tool over more months of subscriber revenue. The durable tool that never needs to be replaced is, from a fleet management revenue perspective, a profit driver. This alignment of manufacturing incentives with durability rather than with planned obsolescence is unusual enough in manufacturing that it deserves to be named explicitly as one of the most significant structural differences between Hilti's business model and the models of its competitors. Hilti's engineers are incentivized to build tools that last as long as possible and require as little maintenance as possible. DeWalt's and Milwaukee's and Makita's engineers are not incentivized against durability, but the incentive structure of their businesses does not create the same positive alignment between extreme durability and corporate revenue. The fleet management model makes Hilti's financial interest and its customers' interest identical on the dimension of tool durability. Both benefit from tools that last as long as possible with as little maintenance as required. That alignment is genuinely unusual, and it produces tools whose construction reflects it. The Martin Hilti Family Trust, the ownership structure that makes it possible. Everything we have described about Hilti's business model, the direct sales investment, the fleet management model's patient revenue ramp, the long-term R&D required to continuously develop tools that justify the premium the model requires, depends on a corporate ownership structure that insulates Hilti from the short-term pressure that publicly traded companies face. Hilti is not publicly traded. It has never been publicly traded. It is owned by the Martin Hilti Family Trust, a charitable foundation established by the Hilti family that holds the equity of the company and distributes its returns according to the trust's mission. The trust structure is not simply a tax or estate planning mechanism. It is the foundational element of Hilti's strategic independence, and understanding its implications is essential for understanding why the Hilti business model works, despite being, in its structural complexity and its capital requirements, something that a publicly traded company would struggle to maintain. A publicly traded company faces quarterly earnings pressure. Analysts follow the company and publish expectations. Market price depends on meeting or exceeding those expectations. Management, whose compensation is tied to share price and quarterly metrics, is structurally incentivized to optimize for the short-term results that markets reward. The direct sales model requires maintaining a large, expensive sales force that generates relationship value and research, intelligence that is not easily captured in quarterly earnings. The productivity of a Hilti salesperson is not just the revenue they generate in any given quarter, but the intelligence they accumulate, the relationships they build, and the long-term loyalty they develop. None of this shows up clearly in quarterly numbers. The fleet management model requires patient capital. The transition from selling tools for immediate revenue to leasing them for monthly subscription payments is a transition that initially reduces revenue and increases capital requirements as Hilti builds the tool fleet that subscribers are accessing. A company managing quarterly earnings would face significant pressure not to make this transition at all, or to make it in a way that protects near-term metrics at the expense of the long-term model. The trust structure removes both of these pressures. The Martin Hilti Family Trust does not have quarterly earnings calls. It does not have analysts publishing consensus estimates that management faces pressure to beat. Its governance focuses on long-term value creation and the perpetuation of the company's mission, not on short-term financial performance. This structure is also protective against the acquisition-driven value extraction that has affected many other tool brands. Private equity acquisition of tool brands has historically involved cost reduction, brand extension into lower price tiers, reduction of R&D investment, and distribution into mass market channels, all of which generate short-term financial returns at the expense of the brand equity and engineering culture that made the brand worth acquiring. The Martin Hilti family trust makes Hilti essentially acquisition-proof. No party can accumulate enough ownership to force a takeover because the ownership is not available. The company's independence is structural, not dependent on the ongoing strategic decisions of individual managers or the preferences of dispersed shareholders. This structural independence is what allows Hilti to invest in the R&D that distinguishes its products, maintain the sales force that other companies view as an excessive cost, develop the fleet management model over the patient time frame that model requires, and build the digital infrastructure that is now defining the company's next evolution. The professional moat. Why ignoring consumers is a strategy. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of Hilti's business model is its deliberate decision to ignore the consumer DIY market entirely. Most professional tool brands serve two markets. They have professional lines, priced at professional levels with professional performance characteristics, sold through professional channels, and they have consumer lines, lower-priced products with consumer-appropriate features, sold through mass market retailers. DeWalt has consumer tools at Home Depot alongside its professional products. Makita sells tools at Costco as well as through professional distributors. Milwaukee's brand appears in consumer retail settings as well as in professional tool supply. These brands make this dual market decision for understandable commercial reasons. The consumer DIY market is enormous. The volume of consumer tool purchases at mass market retail vastly exceeds the volume of professional tool purchases through professional channels. A brand that can participate in both markets addresses a much larger potential customer base than a brand that serves only professionals. Hilti has looked at this reasoning and concluded that the benefits of consumer market participation are outweighed by the costs. The costs are primarily identity costs. A professional tool brand that appears in consumer retail settings sends an ambiguous message about who its primary customer is. The professional who pays premium prices for premium tools has a legitimate concern that the brand they associate with professional grade quality is also making lower quality, lower priced tools for the consumer who wants to build a backyard deck. The presence of a brand at Costco tells the professional something about that brand's priorities. It tells them that the brand values volume and accessibility over the exclusivity of professional partnership. It creates the psychological distance between brand and professional that Black & Decker's consumer expansion created, the dynamic that eventually forced Black & Decker to launch DeWalt as a separate brand to recover professional credibility. Hilti has chosen to avoid this dynamic by never entering it. The company's products are available only through Hilti's direct sales channels. There is no Hilti product on any retail shelf anywhere in the world. This restriction is not a distribution limitation. It is a deliberate positioning choice. By being available only to professionals who engage with Hilti's sales organization, Hilti maintains the exclusive professional identity that makes the brand relevant to the contractors and construction professionals who will pay for the performance and relationship it provides. The professional moat that results is not just about product quality. It is about what using Hilti communicates about the professional who uses it. A tool that is available only through a relationship with a technically expert sales organization communicates something different about the contractor who uses it than a tool available at the same retailer selling garden hoses. Solving problems that tools alone cannot solve. As Hilti's direct relationship with construction professionals deepened, over decades, the company accumulated expertise in construction problems that extended beyond the tools it was selling to solve those problems. Fire protection is one example. In modern commercial construction, fire protection systems are a critical compliance requirement. Penetrations through fire-rated barriers, the holes that pipes, conduits, and other building services must pass through rated walls and floors, must be fire-stopped to maintain the fire resistance of the barrier. The fire-stopping systems that fill these penetrations are a specialized technical category that requires knowledge of both the construction method and the fire protection requirements. Hilti developed fire-stopping products and the technical expertise to go with them. A Hilti representative who was already on a job site helping contractors with fastening applications could also advise on fire-stopping requirements for the penetrations those contractors were creating. The relationship with the contractor expanded from power tools to a broader category of construction problem-solving. Seismic retrofitting is another example. In seismic zones, existing buildings may require structural modification to improve their earthquake resistance. The anchoring systems used in seismic retrofitting require precise engineering, tested and certified connections, and installation procedures verified to meet code requirements. Hilti developed anchor systems specifically for seismic applications and the documentation and expertise that contractors and engineers need to design and certify seismic retrofitting work. These extensions of Hilti's product and service offering are possible because of the direct relationship with construction professionals that the direct sales model maintains. A company selling through retail does not have the ongoing relationship with the contractor that would allow it to understand the seismic retrofitting problem, develop a solution for it, and verify that the solution is being correctly applied. Hilti's ability to extend into these specialized categories is a direct product of its relationship model. The relationship creates the intelligence that reveals the problems. The problems reveal the opportunities. The technical capability to develop and deploy solutions creates the expansion of what Hilti means to its professional customers, the Neuron platform, and the digital evolution. The most recent evolution of Hilti's competitive strategy reflects a pattern that is reshaping manufacturing across multiple industries. The integration of digital capability with physical products to create value that neither provides alone. The Neuron cordless platform is Hilti's current generation of battery technology, designed from the beginning around digital connectivity and data generation. The Neuron battery is not simply a power source. It is a connected device that communicates with Hilti's cloud infrastructure, transmitting data about its usage, its charge cycles, its temperature, and its location. This connectivity creates capabilities that have no equivalent in conventional battery tool systems. The battery knows which tool it has been used in. The tool knows what tasks it has been performing. The combination of battery data and tool data aggregated across a fleet of tools used by a contractor over time creates a usage record that has operational and financial value beyond anything that the tool's physical performance provides. For Hilti's fleet management subscribers, the Neuron platform provides the underlying data infrastructure that makes sophisticated fleet management possible. Hilti knows when tools are being used and when they are sitting idle. They know which tools are approaching maintenance intervals based on actual usage rather than calendar time. They know where tools are on a job site, reducing loss and theft that represents a real operational cost for contractors managing multiple tools across large construction sites. The OnTrack asset management system extends this visibility beyond Hilti tools to the contractor's broader asset inventory. A contractor using OnTrack can track not just their Hilti tools, but all of their capital equipment, their power tools from other brands, their hand tools, their measuring equipment. The system becomes the digital inventory of everything the contractor has invested in and needs to manage. For Hilti, OnTrack is strategically significant beyond its direct value to contractors. A contractor whose entire asset inventory is managed through Hilti's platform has created a switching cost that extends beyond the switching cost of any individual tool or tool brand. To switch away from Hilti would require migrating the asset management system, retraining the team on a new platform, and potentially rebuilding the historical data that the system has accumulated. The digital layer that Hilti is building through the Neuron platform and OnTrack is not simply adding features to physical products. It is creating an integration between Hilti's services and the contractor's operational infrastructure that makes the relationship stickier, more valuable, and more difficult to replace than a relationship built on tools alone. This evolution is consistent with the direction that the most successful industrial companies are taking as digital capability becomes central to competitive differentiation. The physical tool is still the visible product. The data it generates, the services it enables, and the operational integration it creates are increasingly the source of value that makes the relationship worth maintaining. The competitive moat. Why nobody copies. The Hilti business model, despite being well documented and widely studied in business schools, has not been widely copied. This requires explanation because if the model generates the competitive advantages described in this script, why have competitors not replicated it? The answer is that the model is self-reinforcing in ways that make it easy to describe and difficult to execute, particularly for companies that have established themselves in conventional distribution. Building a direct sales force of the scale and technical quality that Hilti maintains requires years and significant investment before the productivity of that sales force is sufficient to justify its cost. A company that currently sells through retail would need to fund a parallel investment in direct sales force while maintaining its retail distribution, creating a period of significant cost increase without proportional revenue benefit. Transitioning existing customers from purchase to subscription requires offering them a financial deal that is comparable to purchasing on present value terms, while the company simultaneously bears the capital cost of the tools in the fleet. The transition period is financially unfavorable, and the duration of that period depends on how quickly fleet subscribers scale. Developing the engineering culture and the product iteration cycle that Hilti's direct relationship with professionals enables cannot be purchased or accelerated through investment alone. It develops over time as the intelligence from direct relationships shapes successive product generations. And perhaps most significantly, The trust structure that protects Hilti's ability to make these patient investments is not a model that publicly traded companies can adopt without fundamentally changing their ownership structure and governance. The quarterly earnings pressure that works against patient business model transformation is structural in a publicly traded company, not simply a management preference that can be changed by hiring different management. The Hilti model is not secret. It is studied, discussed, and admired by competitors who then continue selling through distributors and retailers because the transition cost and the patience required are more than their ownership structures will accommodate. $6 billion from a country you have never visited. Hilti generates approximately $6 billion in annual revenue from a headquarters in a principality of roughly 40,000 people that shares a postal service with a neighboring country and is often omitted from maps at scales where it would barely be visible as a dot. The company employs approximately 30,000 people worldwide. Its products are sold in more than 120 countries through direct sales operations that maintain the direct relationship model across every market where Hilti operates. The company has never been public. It has never been acquired. It has never been restructured by private equity. It has never appeared on a retail shelf. It has, instead, spent 8 decades building relationships with the professionals who build the physical world, developing tools that those professionals trust their safety and their livelihood to, financing those tools in ways that align Hilti's interests with its customers' interests, and investing in the digital capability that will define the next generation of what it means to be a construction technology company rather than a power tool manufacturer. The story of Hilti is not a story about refusing to sell on Amazon out of stubbornness or misplaced exclusivity. It is a story about understanding what a business actually is and building every element of the organization around that understanding. Hilti is a construction partner, not a tool manufacturer that happens to have a sales team, not a retailer that packages goods for professional buyers. A construction partner, which means a company whose value comes from the relationship, the expertise, the service, and the trust that exists between Hilti and the professionals who depend on it. Everything else, the direct sales model, the fleet management subscriptions, the trust ownership, the digital platforms, all of it is the organizational infrastructure of that partnership. And that, in the end, is why nobody has successfully copied it. The infrastructure is easy to describe. The relationship is impossible to replicate without starting over and beginning the conversation. In a warehouse in Schön, Liechtenstein in 1941, Martin Hilti began that conversation. 80 years later, it is still going.